Alright folks, what's the crack? Welcome back to another episode of Meet the Members, where we have the chance to sit down and get to know some of the incredible people, the residents who call Ormeau Baths their business home. Joined today with Rory. We're super excited to get to know Rory a wee bit more. So Rory, great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad we finally were able to set it up. It's like, oh my goodness.
6 months in the making.
Yeah, between COVID and like production timelines and stuff, like it's finally happening. So, you know, huge expectations for this interview. I think it's gonna, Oscars have never really looked at podcasts before, but I think this could be the one that will just like peak above the fold.
I'm actually getting out of pressure now, so please don't be bullying too much.
We always just like to start off with kind of like a wee random bit about who we're talking to, and you'd sent through before the interview that you'd spent some time living in LA. So, what was that all about? Like you going off, leaving Northern Ireland and pursuing the American dream? Like give us the why and the how.
Something like that. At the time I was working in film and TV production. I was a production assistant, and for one reason or another, an opportunity, I had a visa that allowed me to go to America, so I moved to LA. Had a bit of a random time. I went out with a kind of an internship lined up. It unfortunately didn't work out, but lucky enough I fell on a bunch of short filmmakers, and through that network I managed to secure a couple of jobs. So I worked for the British Film Commission, who are kind of similar to Northern Ireland Screen, but they look after the whole of the UK. So I worked for those folks for the majority of the time. I was doing bar work at the weekends in an Irish bar, that traditional thing.
I mean, did you even go to America if you didn't do that as an
Irish guy? No, you
you
have to use those networks, and the accents get you somewhere. But I had a great time. Lived in Culver City, which was just up the road from Venice Beach. So spent most of my Sundays in Venice Beach, walking up and down, just watching the BFC, the British Film Commission. Was great folks to work with because it was a whole different world to kind of explore. Like it was just going to kind of BAFTA events and running events for the Oscars and stuff, which was a lot of fun. And it kind of set me up for things in the future in terms of me working in the current role I had now. And then after LA, I went traveling to kind of New Zealand and Australia, and helped me make introductions into there. So kind of
awesome.
Great time, like early 20s. It's about 10 years ago now. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Lucky enough, it all worked out. It was a bit sketchy for me the first wee while, but after a month or two of like painting fences and cutting grass, I eventually got jobs that kind of got me in the industry. So it was a great time, and it's bad. It's over 10 years ago that I lived there, so it's great.
Madness, very cool. So take us back just slightly. I'm not going to do like a massive like expose into like your origin story, but like what got you into film? What got you into TV at a young age? Like was there like one VHS you remember, or like one cinema experience? I know this is like classic like low hanging fruit journalism stuff, but like was there a moment that you were like, I want to work in this sector?
Yeah. So like now I work in video games. So video games has always been a passion. But probably when I was like 18, 19, video games wasn't really a thing. I got an industry here. I went to uni to history and journalism, came out of it back in 2008, 2009, was working in hospitality, and then just by chance I emailed a bunch of folks around film and TV production. Like I'm a massive fan of Indiana Jones. That's like my earliest memory of film and TV, or like hanging onto the seats in the Curzon from the T-Rex in Jurassic Park, like as an 8-year-old terrified. So that kind of spurred me into film and TV production. Emailed a bunch of folks. Lucky enough, I ended up on a film called Grabbers, which is like an Irish comedy horror movie, which I recommend. It's quite funny.
Awesome.
And then lucky enough, I ended up with them. Led me on to LA, New Zealand and stuff, and then came back. Worked in financial services for a while. Realized it wasn't my forte. Lucky enough, I ended up with a gig in Northern Ireland Screen in the marketing team. From there, went on to work with Retinize up in the Lisbon Road. Worked them doing business development, and then the opportunity came up eventually to kind of come back here and be a director manager at Northern Ireland Screen, which has led me to be like working out of here with the Pixel Mill. So not necessarily a straight line. I don't always got a straight line, but no.
Yeah, the career advisor at GCSE level just wouldn't have a clue.
No, like in film and TV, like being 16, 17, working in the film and TV industry, like that wasn't an area to work in. Now we have parents. I remember working on screen the first time, and we had parents calling up when I want to get my kids into the sector. And we even starting to see that now with parents contacting me going, my kid loves video games, how do we get them into the industry?
Yeah.
That we unheard of like even 5 years ago.
Yeah,
so it's really changed, and it's really exciting actually.
I think that's an awesome kind of like proof of how important the work that you guys is as well, because like as you say, like less than 5 years ago there's now opportunities that exist here that just didn't exist. Like you're starting to kind of forge the early pathways for the next kind of people to go down, you know?
Well, I'm looking off, like I'm building off like the work of my predecessor Donal. Like he got the Pixel established in 2018, but the Northern Ireland Screen's been supporting games for about 10-12 years now. It's one of our key sectors alongside film, TV and animation. Video games, or interactive as we call it, which is video games and immersive, falls within that. But the studios, both within the Pixel and the ones that have left the Pixel, the ones that have been outside the whole time, have done incredibly well. We've probably, I think we've 8 productions at the moment, 8 projects in production at various different stages, which we never had before. Which is incredibly busy. Talent is huge at the moment. Like I now have studios. Before it would be me going, do you want to take someone on? Now they're like, do you have someone? Which is excellent to see. And like we're running like a bunch of opportunities for like people want to get work experience in the industry, but also people who are like finished education and need their first placements. And we have loads of opportunities around that there. So it's actually an interesting time just in terms of just the amount of work going on and the amount of people like support folks in terms of like talent. Before maybe funding for projects was the challenge, but now studios are now securing project funding in like 1, 2, 3 millions, and now they're like, oh, we actually need people, and that's really interesting kind of challenge. But no, it's an exciting time, and like the Pixel has been great to kind of help foster that to a certain extent. But it's all down really to the talent of the studios and the resilience of the studios. Like a lot of these studios have been going 5-10 years.
Wow.
And now they're kind of hitting it to the point where they're kind of a level of sustainability, so it's all credit to them really.
That's cool. So talk to us like a little bit, this is probably like a PhD subject, but like how has the gaming sector like slowly started to take shape, say over the last 5-10 years in Northern Ireland? Because I think you did say, like when you left for LA, like there seemingly was nothing.
When I left for LA, like Game of Thrones had just been commissioned for its pilot, so Game of Thrones had a massive impact on the wider screen industries in Northern Ireland because it gave profile, it kind of raised the profile of the screen industries in Northern Ireland as a whole. Which meant there was more support for the wider screen industries, and we've seen that in terms of like the animation industry here is like probably the biggest hub for animation production within the UK outside of London.
Incredible.
Like there's six or seven studios producing content that sells around the world, and then the actual entertainment like TV drama, independent film is all growing, and interactive is alongside that. So we're seeing a lot of growth, and like it's just kind of it's taken a while. Like we're actually just doing a head count of the industry, and like back in 2016 there were 60 people working in the video interactive sector, and that covers like both content in terms of video games and immersive, but also we're starting to see service companies kind of appear as well, and like that's kind of grown. The last time we did a head count was around about 230 back in 21, and I think we're doing a head count at the moment, and I kind of expect that to grow as well. And it's really just interesting to see like studios have grown in terms of like they've consistently produced and released content, but also like the mix of companies as well. We've got companies making games like across different platforms, different genres. Also we're starting to see those kind of service companies come on board as well that bring different kind of support, either user testing or production support. So it's really kind of growing. Just the mix of the industry is really changed as well.
That's cool. I'm always interested like in kind of breakout industries, like where is the biggest need for talent? So, you know, the people that are coming kind of knocking on your door, like do you have anybody? Like who are they specifically looking for?
Everything, unfortunately.
Really?
It's a really so like it's like what I mentioned was 8 projects in production. Like the biggest one is up in Derry, like Hightail in Derry, which is Hypixel Studios. They're owned by Riot Games, like one of the biggest projects, definitely Northern Ireland by a country mile, but in the world. And like they hire their senior people from Silicon Valley. Like their top programmers and designers come from like Facebook, Riot, like Google.
Wow. Now
they look junior talent, and that's something that we have to help them out with, hopefully in the next kind of 12 to 18 months. But even our indie studios are slightly smaller studios, like they're growing to teams of like 18 to 20 people, and like programmers are important as a key part of it, but also designers in terms of game design, art, 3D is becoming more important, but also like UX UI, like whereas before the industry was asking for generalists, like a 3D generalist or a programming generalist, now they're starting asking for specifics.
Interesting.
Like, yes, you're a Unity programmer, but do you have an appreciation for multiplayer? Yes, you're a programmer, but can you do a bit of like UX, UI and stuff?
Yeah.
3D generalist, like 3D artist, is not necessarily modeling. It's like, can you do the technical artist role as well? So it's a really interesting kind of maturing of the sector. And again, where we kind of come in there as Around Screens, we try to support that development of talent either through running specific programs, like we have the Pixel trainee program where we train up new talent by placing them on projects, or do we offer skills and workshops, development. So like for Christmas we did like a technical artist workshop for people working on Unreal. We'll probably do more about that in the future. Or we trained up about 28 people in Unity professional certification during the COVID period. So we do massive amounts around talent development, and like that's a key part of it. Like the company development part is important, but also making sure there's people coming through that can fill those roles as they're needed.
Yeah, totally. Talk to me a wee bit about like the space downstairs. I don't mean like all the table and the chairs. I mean like I walk past, sometimes going to the toilet and I look in, and it's my favourite room to look into and have a nosy, because it's just like there's so many people in there, and their screens are like probably the most interesting screens in normal Bass. The normal Bass has a lot of interesting screens. The people are working on like characters and stuff, but am I right in saying that it's not like everyone's working on the same thing? It's like a collective of lots of smaller kind of companies.
So it's a real mix. So in there at the moment, we have a bit of a hot desking for freelancers, and people come in as and when, but also I'll just go through like the list at the moment. There's probably 7 studios in there at the moment. So as you go in, you have or studios, so or digital. So they're on a program called Transfuser, which is a UK wide competition for student startups. So they're making the first prototype for the game. So we're kind of supporting them with mentorship and test space. But also at the same point, they do like art or outsourcing. They're currently doing virtual production and getting trained up in virtual production. So doing a real mix of stuff basically around that kind of interactive, like I won't say vertical, but like across the breadth in terms of games and film and TV production.
Awesome.
You also have Immersional, who are working in VR and creating like what they call PowerPoint for VR. So you don't need to be a professional to pull together a VR experience. They're working for something really interesting. You have the Ulster Touring Opera. So David there is working on creating AR experiences that engage people with opera.
Incredible.
So it's really different. You have the folks from like Amber Tail who are working on Amber Isle, which if you play video games and you play Animal Crossing, it's like Animal Crossing with cute dinosaurs.
I've seen some of their demos and stuff.
It's class. Like like they have a huge following on Twitter and on social media, and there's a lot of excitement around that game.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting to see where that goes. We have Hollow Moon, who are a new studio, they're on our platform program. So we run like Transfuser, and then after Transfuser there's a mini game for studios to make the first game, and then platforms for studios to develop the business further. So Hollow Moon they met on one of our training programs called Restart for new entrants, became friendly, decided to form a company, went on mini game, made their first game, and now they're on platform where they're developing the business.
I saw a call for applicants on the mini game recently, and I just thought that was such an interesting concept and a really smart idea. Like we talked kind of off mic there. It's like someone who wants to like become a novelist, like writing some short stories, self-publishing something on Amazon, and then using that as the platform to kind of like push themselves up to what's next.
Like it's us, like we're like our funding is a commercial fund, but we judge success at different points in a studio's development in different ways. So sometimes at the early development isn't necessarily like getting huge commercial success. It's just showing that you can deliver, building up credibility, building up momentum, and hopefully that a bit further down the line, then when you have that bigger project, when a publisher or an investor looks at you you've clearly delivered before, a bit of support will help you go further. So that's a key part of it, and it takes time. Like some of our established studios, like they've been going, like I say, 10 years, and now like probably the one that's consistently produced stuff is like Billy Goat, and they're on their 4th project and they're working on 10 years, and we've been working with them on and off for those 10 years, supporting where we can. It takes that time. Now you have some other teams that are just hitting the right moment and they'll go in their first project, but It does take time.
Yeah.
Like Inertial Drift, released by Level 91. Like Michael was working on that game 7 years, 5 years part time when he was working on his own thing, and 2 years full time. So it does take time. But that's where we try to be helpful. Like we try to, those new studios that are kind of going to be coming out of the colleges and universities over the next couple of years, give them a where they can kind of develop their skill set. We don't expect all the studios to be successful.
Sure.
But even if their games aren't successful and maybe they realize, okay, running a game studio isn't for us, they've been through that process of developing a game, which is invaluable for other studios for them to potentially fill their spots. So it all kind of melds in together, kind of connects in together in different ways.
That's perfect. And like what you guys are doing is you're providing the runway in an industry that you need the runway. You know, you can't just like what I did with podcasting. You can't like bootstrap your way like from working Deliveroo and you get a couple of quid and you can kind of level up. Like there is that kind of element of like holding your breath for a longer time before the financial reward comes in.
Like we're not we can never like be fully supported, like fully fund people, but we are give enough support that can get them going. Like we also try and encourage studios in here to kind of develop a commercial business in terms of, okay, here's your new studio, but can you do service work? Can you do work for hire? Is there other sources of finance or funding that you secure? So we try to encourage that as well, but we try to be a support in terms of like, there's no guarantee of all these different kind of programs for folks to go into, but there is a pathway, and if you deliver and you're able to stay together as a team and develop as a team, there's those opportunities. But at the same time, we encourage new studios to go, okay, find those other sources, because it could be 5-6 years before you get that big project that is the thing you hang your hat on. So building sustainability as a business is important.
Awesome.
And growing that team as well, because as you go to bigger projects, there's an expectation for publishers that you have that bigger team. So being able to build up that kind of network of folks that you work with, network of folks that you know that you can deliver with a project with is important as well.
Awesome. So shifting gears slightly then, like talk to me about Ormo itself. So, you know, I mentioned kind of earlier, like Ormo is a very weird and wonderful place with lots and lots of weird and wonderful people in it and different businesses. Like, I just think it's amazing. I love whenever I kind of do the tour of the building with podcast guests and you know, customers, showing off the Pixel Mill, telling the Pixel Mill story. But like as a place itself, and again, you can talk about the tables and the chairs if you want. But what does this place do for you personally? Like this actual building itself? No,
it's great. Like the history of the building is kind of cool to be in. Like the fact it's over 100 years old and there's a connection to the history of Belfast is pretty awesome. It's really like my job. Like I connect in with different hubs around the world of video games. Like I connections with like similar incubators in Barcelona and in Sweden, talking to folks in Melbourne and like New Zealand, across the world, and like I have other folks who come to me like from down south, from across the water. They hear the Pixel Mill and the Ormo Baz as a whole collective, and they kind of go, "How does this work?" And like it is like it's probably not by design, but it's the fact there's a mix of stuff in here, and like it's not all just one focus on one particular sector. There's a mix of kind of talent in here. I know this side of the West Wing is a bit more of a creative slant, because like I know Imagine that you have a studio and like you have Hat Trick next door and ourselves, but and Digital Catapult as well. But what's been great is that I worked in Ormo Baz before I joined the Pixel Mill in a different role.
Oh, cool. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, I was hot desking next door in the East Wing for a different company which run film TV locations, and it's just a nice vibe, and like you kind of appreciate everyone here is in the same boat, if you know what I mean. There's no one really here on a free ride as such, you know. And everyone's here trying to build their work, build their business, and like having that place that people can have like a baseline kind of level of support or community to tap into has been vitally important. And the great work that I don't know, when I bring people in, they're always impressed by not just the physical building and the mix of companies, but also the fact that there's a lot of work done to connect folks and mix folks in, and and like that's always kind of appreciated. And like also explaining that the Pixel Mill isn't just a standalone; it sits within a wider community is important. Because like when other people talk to us about setting up a games incubator, like I kind of stress like, look, part of that kind of success, or like part of why we're able to do well, is because we're in with a bunch of other companies, and allows us to kind of there's not always direct crossover, but being within with that wider community, or at least in that space that feels like there's a lot of stuff happening, is beneficial. So like that's Normal Bass kind of has different levels in terms of like it's a great place to work, great building, obviously great people within it, but also like I think like we bring people in, they kind of see that as like, okay, well, this is something that we should aspire to, or like look at as a way things should be done, which is really helps me in my job in terms of when I'm talking to folks about Northern Ireland, because they can see, okay, this is a place, a thing, which is funny considering the last 2 years everything's been virtual. Spaces and places I think is becoming increasingly more kind of important, just for people to kind of coalesce around, not all the time, but at least there's a focal point that people can come together, which is actually becoming more important.
I think especially like as our work becomes like less and less tangible as well, like we're all working on like digital assets on digital devices, like it's all kind of up here. There is something so nice about like having those kind of physical touch points as well.
One of the studios in the Pixamill, or one of the companies, go testify, like they were working remotely, and then they were asking, oh, can we just use your boardroom to kind of bring the team together, and then they kind of like, Jesus, it's actually kind of nice meeting together. And now the team got, like some of their team comes in hot desk every so often, and we've had other studios will contact us just to go, look, can we just come in and just use the boardroom and the meeting space just to bring the team together. I think that's going to become more and more important, just to kind of people can get their work done, but just to kind of, I know, bring everyone back together, make sure everyone's like on the same touch points and stuff is important. So spaces like this where people can come in on an ad hoc basis will become more and more important, I think, especially in the creative industries. I think it's really important.
Cool. One more question. Again, total kind of change of pace, just kind of land the plane. We always kind of finish here. How will it tweak it? I'll just say, like, you know, if you could go back in time to, you know, early 20 Rory on the plane going to LA, and you could like go and like give him like a can of Coke or whatever your order is. You have a couple of minutes just to say something to him. What would you say to him?
It all works out, pretty much. Like everything's fixable. Pretty much everything is fixable. So as much as something that seems like a complete dumpster fire at the time, generally it all works out. Just keep your head down, work hard, it'll be fine. Generally, so that's one bit of advice. And yeah, nothing's really ever permanent, so it's all kind of fixable. That's the kind of advice I would give to anyone, even our new studios coming in. Like, there's never anything that's not, you can't turn around and fix. So that's generally the advice that we give to folks. But yeah, that's what I give them advice. And definitely on the plane, like that, as much as the initial stages of LA was a bit hectic, it all worked out. So it's always get on the plane and always go.
Awesome, man.
Cool.
Well, look, thank you so much for spending this time with myself and Rory. Hope you enjoyed it. I had a good crack and enjoyed getting to know Rory a bit more. I always say this, like, whenever at the end of these episodes, but like, it's a lovely opportunity for me just to get to know people as well. It's like
it's good fun.
Yeah, it's like a really nice way just to like work your way around the different residents and like even understand what everyone does as well. So yeah, look, if you've been watching a couple of these series and you're not one of the residents already in Normal Bass that's like listening while you work to like creep and find out more about the people that you see at the water cooler but you're too afraid to talk to, you can come and get a free tour of Normal Bass. You can come check this place out if you are an entrepreneur, a creative, you're working remotely for your company and you're interested, as Rory was saying, in finding that ad hoc place that you can kind of come to a physical location and do your work in a community of like-minded people. We'd love to hear from you. You can, somewhere up here on the website, you can get in contact with us. We'd love to see you here. And other than that, Rory, appreciate you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for today.
See you, everybody.
And we'll catch you next time.